And good afternoon. You're listening to Ken Hudnall. This is the Ken Hudnall Show. Coming to you from our studios right here in exciting El Paso, Texas. Gateway to the Old West and the most haunted city in the country. Well, today's May the 27th, 147th day of this new year. Only 218 days remain till the year's over with, and we'll do it again. It's celebrated worldwide. One of the most important Islamic holidays of the year, Eid al-Adha. It's also widely observed as World Otter Day. Highlight conservation efforts for the species. The number of other observances on this particular date, including National Great Popsicle Day, Cellophane Tape Day, and National Sunscreen Day. On this date in 1937, the Golden Gate Bridge opened up to pedestrian traffic, connects San Francisco to the Marin County. 2016, Barack Obama made history, became the first sitting U.S. president to visit the Hiroshima Peace Memorial in Japan. Well, let's see what stories we have in the news, because, as I say every day, there's always something new going on. Well, they're calling it a MAGA triumph. Trump ally Ken Paxton defeated John Cornyn in a bitter Texas GOP primary war. We had voting yesterday. President Trump, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton are the big winners in the Lone Star State's Republican Senate primary battle, which has spanned more than a year and become the most expensive Senate primary in history. Paxton, who was endorsed by Trump just a week ago, defeated longtime GOP Senator John Cornyn in Tuesday's runoff election for the Republican nomination. Paxton now faces off against State Representative James Tararico, rising star in the Democratic Party. It's going to be a general election. It's going to be among a handful that may decide if the Republicans hold their 53 to 47 majority in the Senate. Tallarico, who top progressive star Representative Jasmine Crockett, the vocal Trump critic in the March primary, is trying to become the first Democrat to nearly 40 years to win a Senate election in Texas. Cornyn talked to reporters after the race was called. Said, "I've always supported the Republican ticket, and I intend to do so again in the general election." I've met him a number of times, gone to him on a number of issues. Well, a controversial Democrat who called for Zionists to be imprisoned was toppled after backlash. Democratic Maureen Galindo, a South Texas sex therapist who drew nationwide ire from Democratic Party leaders, was defeated in the primary runoff against Bexar County Sheriff's Office official Johnny Garcia. That seat, newly drawn following Texas Republicans' redistricting effort, is currently represented by squad member Representative Gregorio Cesar. However, the liberal lawmakers running in an adjacent district being vacated by Representative Lloyd Doggett, Democrat of Texas, leaving the now red-leaning seat up for grabs. Galindo became a national flashpoint when she was accused of anti-Semitism for coming up with a plan to imprison American Zionists at an ICE detention center in the district while pushing back on suggestions she was trying to create an internment camp. Galindo shocked observers when she edged out Garcia in the regional March primary, which led to yesterday's runoff. The Pam Bondi, been diagnosed with thyroid cancer weeks after departing as President Trump's Attorney General. Uh, she's 60, who left her role at the Justice Department early April, underwent treatment and is recovering, according to a source. Katie Miller, former White House staffer and podcast host who's married to White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy Stephen Miller, reposted the report on X on Tuesday. She said X has been quietly kicking cancer's ass the last few weeks. She doesn't look 60. Axios disclosed the health update while reporting that Bondi had been appointed by President Trump to an advisory committee focused on the artificial intelligence policy. We'll see if she gets back into the swing of things. Well, Mustafa Khomeini apparently going to sign Trump deal to an unprecedented career setup. Iran's supreme leader would have to approve any final deal with the U.S. through secret courier networks while remaining in hiding as a designated target, according to counterterrorism experts. The unprecedented arrangement, they claim, means Washington is negotiating a high-stakes accord with an entirely invisible counterparty, with a potential memorandum signed by a regime leader and a designated target who can never publicly show his face. Khomeini is a designated target, and every confirmed sighting is a coordinate. That's according to Dr. Omar Mohammed. Courier system used for messaging is non-transitional. It's the operating system of his rule. He went into hiding several weeks ago. Nobody's seen him since. Well, 50,000 evacuees have been cleared to return home after a chemical tank crisis at the Southern California aerospace plant. All evacuation orders stemming from a hazardous materials incident at a Southern California aerospace facility were lifted on Tuesday, allowing thousands of residents to go back home. Officials lifted that evacuation order for residents in Garden Grove living near a damaged chemical tank at the GKN Aerospace Transparency Systems that had previously been at risk of exploding. Authorities said roughly 50,000 people are ordered to evacuate in and around the Orange County city after a tank containing highly flammable methacrylate overheated and became compromised. But now the Orange County Fire Authority Division Chief Craig Covey said during a meeting all residents will go home. Over Memorial Day weekend, a crack unexpectedly formed in the tank, relieving pressure and helping avert a catastrophic explosion, allowing most evacuees to return home then. But roughly 16,000 remained under evacuation orders heading into Tuesday morning. Crews continued spraying water on the tank until the interior temperature stabilized at 92 degrees, down from 100 where it had been over the weekend. Sprinkler system also doused the tank while company specialists and firefighters removed insulation to help cool it down. And let's see what else we got. Well, Pete Hegseth's anti-DEI speech at West Point's a template to save American lives, according to a lot of the so-called experts. If you haven't read, watched, or listened to Secretary of War Pete Hegseth's recent commencement address at West Point, I ought to make the time to do it. It's about protecting the lives of you and your family. And during his, what they're saying are desperately needed remarks, the Secretary of War reminded the cadets before him that the battlefield doesn't grade on a curve. You can't throw your pronouns at the enemy. Combat's the ultimate test, and our best Americans have to ace it. He then singled out the United States Military Academy, calling out the woke and weak leaders who sought to transform West Point into a woke Princeton. That was his alma mater. Well, the combat decorated secretary, in part, mentioned those leaders of West Point, said they embraced the DEI craze and tried to introduce diversity and inclusion studies. Hired professors who advocated for anti-American ideologies right here in these halls. How correct Texas is on that point. A lot of folks said everything he said was absolutely correct. Well, U.S. Olympians' lawsuit against USA Fencing for alleged trans athlete in the women's competition has been dismissed. Another one of God's anointed federal judge dismissed a Title IX lawsuit brought by a U.S. Olympian against USA Fencing over alleged transgender competitors at a past women's competition. Missouri District Judge Fernando Gatan Jr., appointed by George H.W. Bush in 1991, dismissed the lawsuit led by former U.S. Olympic fencer Margarita Guzzi Vincenti without prejudice. That means it can be brought again. The lawsuit was filed in October, and alleged biological males were allowed to compete in the women's and girls' competitions at the 2025 North American Cup in Kansas City last January. USA Fencing and the individual defendants named in the lawsuit have always been deeply committed to providing resources and opportunities to fencers throughout the country. And according to a statement issued by USA Fencing, we're grateful for Judge Gatan's order granting the defendant's motion to dismiss in favor of USA Fencing and the individual defendants. Well, we'll see if they bring it back again. Well, there's been some stunning behind-the-scenes family photos from Donald Trump Jr. and Bettina Anderson's Bahamas wedding that took place over the weekend. Members of the Trump family have been soaking up the Bahama sun after Donald Trump Jr. and Bettina Anderson's joyous wedding weekend, and some are shaking their fun moments on Instagram. In the days after the nuptials, Anderson offered a tiny glimpse of married life so far on Instagram. She posted a photo of a personalized item embroidered with her new name, Mrs. Trump. First daughter Ivanka Trump also shared several behind-the-scenes moments from the celebrations, including photos with her niece Kai Trump, the eldest daughter Donald Trump Jr., and Vanessa Trump. One image showed Ivanka Trump and Kai Trump posing together in colorful summer dresses. Another captured the pair paddleboarding in turquoise waters during downtime over the wedding weekend. And Ivanka Trump paired her yellow bikini with an oversized straw hat. Well, we shall see if this marriage can stand the test. Well, an illegal alien has been charged with killing 4 young people in a wrong-way DUI crash on the Oklahoma highway. The illegal alien is charged with killing 4 people after allegedly driving while intoxicated the wrong way on a highway before striking another vehicle, according to Oklahoma authorities. Michael Rosario Cruz, 27, was released from a hospital and booked into Canadian County Jail on a slew of charges, including 4 counts of second-degree murder, 2 counts of DUI causing great bodily injury and transporting an open container, firearm possession, carrying firearms while under the influence, and driving the wrong way on a one-way road. He was not having a good day. Rosario Cruz was driving early Friday westbound on the east lanes of Interstate 40 in Canadian County when he hit the other vehicle head-on. The 4 people in the struck vehicle, which caught fire, were killed. They ranged in age from 18 to 20. Victims are identified as Kiersey Hickson, 20, Quincy Jones, 19, Haley Salazar, and Brad Palmer, both 18. Well, a lot of undocumented immigrants seem to feel that the traffic laws are suggestions. Years ago, I had a client who had been hit broadside by I think he was from Saudi Arabia as a member of the royal family. And when he pulled out of where he had his car worked on, he floored it and wound up hitting the young lady I represented. Later, he said he was royalty. Traffic laws didn't apply to him. Well, it didn't quite work out the way he anticipated. Well, Super Bowl champion Jerome Bettis is a message for Jackson Dart, Abdul Carter, after the Trump rally controversy. Dart introduced President Trump before his speech in Suffern, New York on Friday. New York Giants teammate Abdul Carter took issue with it. That is, said they don't have to agree on their political opinions, but have to find a way to work together. He said, you don't have to agree. That's the one thing. You don't agree with your teammate, but you got to find a way to work with them, and I think that's what's happening. Well, I first met President Trump in, I think it was 92, in the lobby of Trump Tower. Very personable individual, I found. Well, Representative Goldman is trying to rage bait his way into victory. New York Democratic Representative Dan Goldman, fast becoming the Marie Antoinette of New York politics. As Democratic socialists rage against the privileged elite and promise sweeping welfare programs, Goldman is doubling down on promises of more impeachments and investigations. The ultimate establishment candidate is floundering, repeatedly more than 20 points behind his Mamdani-endorsed opponent, housing advocate and former controller Brad Lander. It appears that impeachments is not resonating with his constituents. Well, what was a city that had a lot of issues is now a city in serious trouble with Mamdani and his bunch running the show. And the issues are expanding to the state stage. Well, the Marie Antoinette of New York politics. That's a fascinating label. A mother and a boyfriend allegedly abandoned a blindfolded young sons in a remote forest as part of a game, according to reports. A French mother allegedly abandoned her two young children in a forest in Portugal while blindfolded, was arrested with her former law enforcement boyfriend while eating at a cafe near Lisbon. Maureen Rousseau, 41, was taken into custody Thursday with Mark Alabriga, 55, 2 days after the couple allegedly dumped her helpless 3- and 5-year-old children in a remote forest and left. That's according to Portuguese and French media. They, according to the cafe owner, Jorge Lopez, they stayed sitting and didn't seem nervous. They were searched and handcuffed without any stress at all. When I saw them so at ease in front of the authorities, I was astonished. It was as if they didn't have any blood running in their veins. The two boys were found crying and alone 125 miles away. Given a situation of evident vulnerability, the children were taken to the home of a local resident where they remained and received initial care in the presence of the officers until they were transferred to a hospital unit. That's according to Portuguese authorities. Two boys turned out to be in good health, were discharged from the hospital on Thursday. The couple faced child endangerment and abandonment charges. Malabriga, former French policeman who quit the force in 2010, faces an additional aggravated assault charge. They were ordered held pending trial. Rousseau's sons were rescued by Arthur Quintas, a local baker who spotted him screaming and crying while frantically stumbling along a main road on May 19th. They carrying backpacks stuffed only with clothes and water and snacks. Quintas said the older brother told him their mother and her boyfriend took him into the forest, covered their eyes as part of a game, and when they took off the blindfolds, both adults had vanished. The pair have since been placed in temporary foster care. Their biological father, who reported them missing on May 11th, is working to bring them back to France. Well, that's my humble opinion. That's a pretty low way to treat your children. Well, Jennifer Lopez has flashed her toned abs in a tiny white bikini. She enjoys a pool time session. She was celebrating Memorial Day with a series of bikini photos. 56-year-old Jenny from the Lock singer shared how she spent her holiday weekend in a new Instagram. featuring photos and videos of her spending the day with her family and friends, and a few bikini shots as well. One of the photos, she's seen smiling up at the camera while lounging poolside in a white string bikini. She accessorized the bikini with a large sun hat and a few layered gold necklaces. Yes, we must have our bling. There's no way to avoid that. In Pakistan, America's most complicated ally, President Trump is betting on it again. As Pakistan's Army Chief, Field Marshal Asim Munir emerged as a key intermediary in negotiations tied to the escalating Iran crisis, Washington once again found itself relying on a country that American officials have spent decades accusing of playing both sides in the war on terror. Munir has emerged as a key intermediary in negotiations aimed at preventing renewed conflict with Iran, which put Pakistan, despite decades of accusations involving Taliban safe havens and nuclear proliferation and Osama bin Laden, back at the center of U.S. diplomacy in the Middle East. You know, even back when I was serving, there were a lot of different stories about Pakistan. Well, Abdul El Sayed says a rallying with Hassan Piker doesn't mean he endorses America deserved 9/11 remark. Michigan Senate candidate Abdul El Sayed defended his decision to hold college campus rallies with progressive political commentator Hassan Piker in an interview Tuesday on the Will Cain Show. El Sayed, who's seeking a Democratic nomination for Michigan's Senate seat in 2026, argued he shares Piker's broader economic and anti-war views while distancing himself from the streamer's most controversial remarks. He said, "My vision is one where every American can afford their basic dignities and a good life. My vision is one where you get health care when you need it, where our government's not wasting your taxpayer dollars dropping bombs on other people's kids." Well, our main topic today, we're going to go back to talking about UFO disclosure files. Government's finally releasing a lot of information that they denied they had right up until it got released to the public. You know, for many Americans, Project Blue Book represented the government's definitive investigation into UFOs, though there are a lot of people that said it was nothing more than a publicity program. Officially active from 1952 to 1969, Blue Book collected thousands of reports involving unidentified aerial phenomena. The Air Force publicly presented the project as a scientific effort designed to determine whether UFOs posed threats to national security. And of course, as you might expect, the project ended with familiar reassurances. No evidence of extraterrestrial visitation, no national security threat, no technology beyond current scientific understanding. Case closed. Or at least that's what the public was supposed to believe. The released files complicated that narrative dramatically. You know, researchers examining newly available records discovered growing evidence that Project Blue Book may have functioned as much as a public relations operation as it was a genuine scientific investigation. That realization transformed historical understanding of the UFO debate. Internally, some military personnel expressed frustration with the project's limitations. Investigators occasionally complained that the cases were dismissed too quickly or explanations forced prematurely to reduce public concern. And the files revealed recurring tensions between scientific inquiry and institutional pressure. Captain Edward Ruppelt, one of the Blue Book's early directors, later acknowledged that serious investigations became increasingly difficult as political pressure mounted to minimize the phenomena publicly. Public ridicule became part of the strategy to do that. The Air Force faced constant media attention, public anxiety, and congressional inquiries during peak UFO waves. Officials sought stability and reassurance rather than open-ended mystery. As a result, many sightings received conventional explanations regardless of lingering uncertainties. The release files show that a surprising percentage of Blue Book cases officially remained unidentified, even after investigation. But this fact received little public emphasis during the project's operational years. Instead, official messaging focused on reassurance. Critics argued this created the illusion that the UFO mystery had been solved, when in reality, significant unresolved cases still persisted. Some of the most controversial incidents involved highly credible witnesses: military pilots, radar operators, police officers, scientists, and strategic personnel. Certain cases included radar confirmation alongside visual observation, evidence difficult to dismiss casually, unless you just ignored it. Public summaries often downplayed those details. For example, the famous Washington, D.C. sightings in 1952 became a prime example. Radar operators tracked unknown objects, maneuvering over the nation's capital while pilots visually observed unusual lights. Fighter jets repeatedly attempted interceptions. And the public reaction was intense, of course. Air Force officials eventually attributed the radar contacts largely to temperature inversions and atmospheric effects. Some scientists accepted this explanation. Others remained unconvinced, of course. The release files revealed deeper concern within military circles than official statements suggested publicly. Another major controversy involved witness intimidation allegations. Several military personnel later claimed they were discouraged from discussing encounters openly. Some described warnings regarding security and professional consequences. A lot of that was seen in Roswell. Defenders of Blue Book argued such claims were exaggerated and that investigators simply sought to avoid public hysteria and misinformation. Maybe that's the case, but the pattern of minimization remained difficult to ignore. In the late 1960s, public confidence in Blue Book deteriorated sharply. Critics accused the program of debunking rather than objective investigation. The Condon Report, produced through the University of Colorado, ultimately recommended ending official UFO study. Air Force, of course, accepted the recommendation and closed Blue Book in 1969. And this appeared, at least publicly, to end serious government interest in UFOs. Privately, though, investigations continued through other channels. That revelation may be the most important legacy of the Blue Book illusion. Government never truly stopped studying the phenomena, merely changed how those studies were organized and how much the public was allowed to know. Well, at the center of the disclosure debate lies one unavoidable question. If even a fraction of the reported UFO performances characteristics are accurate, what kind of technology could produce them? The released files intensified this mystery dramatically. Military encounters repeatedly described objects capable of instantaneous acceleration, silent operation, abrupt directional changes, hypersonic speeds, hovering without visual propulsion, and seamless movement between the air and the water. No publicly acknowledged aerospace system could be capable of such performances, but credible military witnesses continue describing exactly that. Scientists and engineers examining the reports confronted disturbing possibilities. Traditional aircraft rely on aerodynamic lift, fuel combustion, heat generation, structural limitations. Even pilots can withstand only a finite acceleration forces before injury or death occurs. Reported objects often appeared unconstrained by these limitations. Some researchers proposed advanced propulsion systems involving electromagnetic manipulation, gravity control, plasma fields, internal reduction, or exotic energy sources beyond current engineering. Most mainstream physicists remain skeptical. Theoretical discussions of gravity manipulation and space-time distortion exist within advanced physics, but no publicly demonstrated technology has achieved anything remotely resembling reported UFO capabilities. Still, the released files revealed ongoing government interest in unconventional aerospace concepts. Classified research programs explore directed energy and advanced materials and electromagnetic propulsion in highly experimental flight systems. Defense contractors repeatedly appeared in association with restricted aerospace studies. This fuels speculation regarding reverse engineering programs. If retrieval programs existed, could governments have recovered technologies far beyond conventional human science? Skeptics argue no verified evidence supported such claims publicly. But some officials quietly acknowledged another uncomfortable reality. Certain military encounters remained technologically inexplicable. The Tic Tac incident became one of the most analyzed modern examples. Pilots and radar operators described performance exceeding known aircraft capabilities dramatically. If the observations were accurate, these objects displayed no visible exhaust, no wings, no control surfaces, an acceleration beyond contemporary aerospace engineering. And how did they do that? Well, the release files offer no definitive answer. Some researchers proposed advanced drone systems utilizing breakthroughs hidden within classified programs. Others suggested foreign adversaries may possess technologies underestimated by Western intelligence. But many analysts privately admitted neither explanation fully fit the reported data. And most unsettling was the possibility humanity may already possess fragments of physics not yet integrated into mainstream engineering. Scientific revolutions often began with anomalies. Concepts once considered impossible eventually become ordinary, such as powered flight, nuclear energy, satellites, quantum mechanics, and artificial intelligence, all once seemed fantastical, are now mainstream. Could UFO phenomena point toward another scientific revolution waiting beyond current understanding? The release files reportedly hinted and repeatedly hinted at this possibility without confirming it directly. And somewhere behind classified doors, engineers and physicists may still be struggling to understand technologies that should not exist according to conventional assumptions. Well, if unidentified craft have ever been recovered, the obvious next question follows naturally. Could humanity reverse engineer technology originating beyond current scientific capability? Well, the release files certainly reignited this debate with extraordinary intensity. Whistleblowers have alleged that highly classified programs involving recovered materials and advanced aerospace analysis operated within contractor-controlled environments shielded from ordinary oversight. Official confirmation remained absent, of course. But references to exotic materials studies and compartmentalized aerospace research and restricted technological assessments appeared repeatedly throughout newly available documents. Researchers began connecting patterns. For decades, rumors have circulated about unusual alloys, memory metals, you bend them and they go right back to their original shape, ultra-lightweight composites, radiation-resistant materials, and propulsion concepts far beyond public engineering. And some stories, though, were clearly exaggerated. Others remain strangely persistent. The challenge of reverse engineering truly advanced technology would be immense. Imagine handing a modern smartphone to scientists from the 18th century. Even if they possessed the device physically, understanding microprocessors and software and satellite systems and semiconductor manufacturing would require entire scientific revolutions. And the gap between humanity and a significantly advanced civilization might be exponentially greater. This possibility, of course, fascinated intelligence planners. Even partial understanding of advanced propulsion, energy systems, or materials science could transform civilization completely. We'd have limitless energy, anti-gravity flight, revolutionary computing, advanced medicine, or maybe entirely new branches of physics. Such breakthroughs would possess incalculable military and economic value, and that reality alone could justify extreme secrecy. Well, the release files hinted at ongoing frustration within classified research environments. Certain documents suggested investigators struggled to understand unusual properties associated with recovered materials or unexplained aerospace observances. Some researchers believe governments achieved limited breakthroughs through reverse engineering efforts. Others argued no meaningful progress occurred because the technologies remained too advanced. And skeptics proposed a similar explanation. They said many exotic technologies likely originated from advanced but entirely human black budget aerospace programs. They just simply do not want to admit the possibility of non-human entities being involved. And this theory, of course, carried weight. History repeatedly demonstrated that classified military technology often appears decades ahead of public understanding. Stealth systems, hypersonic research, and advanced drone technologies once seemed impossible to outside observers. But some encounters appeared to exceed even speculative black budget and black project capabilities. And that gap fueled the ongoing mystery. Well, these files also raised another disturbing possibility: competition. If multiple nations recovered anomalous technology or believed rivals had done so, that result could trigger secret technological arms races unlike anything in history. Several intelligence analysts quietly feared precisely this scenario. Foreign governments closely monitored American disclosure developments while maintaining secrecy regarding their own investigations. International cooperation appeared limited despite the phenomenon's global nature. UFOs are not just in this country. They're in every country in the world. Maybe the reason for the limited cooperation is because the stakes are enormous. Whoever masters revolutionary technology first could reshape geopolitical power permanently. That possibility alone ensures secrecy will remain intense regardless of the phenomenon's true origin. And whether reverse engineering programs generally exist remains uncertain. But the release files demonstrated one unidentifiable truth. Governments and defense contractors have shown extraordinary interest in technologies associated with unexplained aerospace phenomena for generations. And somewhere, inside highly restricted laboratories, researchers may still be attempting to understand machines humanity is never supposed to possess. Well, for decades, disclosure existed largely as a theory. Researchers debated possibilities endlessly while governments released only fragments of information. The public, of course, remained divided between belief and skepticism and uncertainty. But what happens if disclosure moves beyond ambiguity? What happens today humanity receives undeniable proof that non-human intelligence does exist? The release files reveal that governments consider this scenario far more seriously than most citizens realized. Their internal studies have repeatedly and reportedly examined societal reaction, economic disruption, religious consequences, military implications, psychological effects associated with full disclosure. Officials apparently understood the stakes. Human civilization rests upon shared assumptions about reality, history, and humanity's place in the universe. Confirmed contact with advanced non-human intelligence could change those assumptions fundamentally. Some analysts feared panic. Others predicted fascination rather than chaos. Modern society may prove more psychologically prepared than earlier generations. Popular culture spent decades normalizing extraterrestrial concepts through entertainment and literature and scientific discussion. But real disclosure would differ profoundly from fiction. The implications have become immediate and personal. Questions would erupt immediately. Are the entities hostile? How long has contact occurred? What technologies exist? What else have governments hidden? Does religion survive? What happens to global power structures? Our financial markets would react unpredictably. Defense systems would enter heightened alert. Religious leaders, scientists, and political authorities would face immense pressure for answers they may not possess. The release files hinted that uncertainty itself represents one of the greatest fears. Governments can manage known threats more easily than unknown realities. If officials themselves lack clear understanding of the phenomena, full disclosure becomes extraordinarily dangerous politically. Public trust could collapse rapidly if authorities admit decades of secrecy without possessing definitive explanations. And this might help explain the gradual nature of modern disclosure. Governments appear to be acclimating the public slowly. They first acknowledge unidentified objects. Then they acknowledge military encounters, then investigative programs, and then unresolved cases. Each step normalizes the discussion incrementally. Some researchers believe this process is intentional conditioning designed to reduce future shock. Others argue officials are simply reacting reluctantly to mounting evidence and public pressure. And either way, of course, disclosure no longer feels hypothetical. The released files changed the conversation permanently. Mainstream media now discusses unidentified phenomena seriously. Congress conducts hearings openly. Scientists cautiously engage the issue. The taboo is breaking down, so to speak. But perhaps the most important realization is this. Full disclosure may not arrive as a single dramatic moment. It may never be a worldwide announcement confirming extraterrestrial visitation. Instead, humanity may experience a gradual shift in understanding over years or decades as evidence accumulates and secrecy erodes internally and incrementally. That process may already be underway. If that's the case, civilization could currently be living through one of the most historically significant transitions in human history without fully recognizing it. Well, imagine waking up one morning to global confirmation humanity is not alone in the universe. It's no longer a rumor. It's not speculation, not blurry videos or leaked documents, but actual proof. How would civilization respond? Today's uncertainty ends. Well, the released files reveal that governments, intelligence agencies, and defense analysts had quietly examined this question for generations. Their conclusions varied widely. One theme appeared repeatedly. The consequences would reshape humanity permanently. Initially, confusion would likely dominate. Citizens would demand answers governments may not fully possess. Social media would erupt instantly. Financial markets would destabilize temporarily. Religious leaders, scientists, military officials, and political authorities would struggle to establish coherent narratives. Public trust, of course, would become critical. The governments admitted they concealed information for decades. A lot of citizens would immediately question what else had been hidden, who benefited from this secrecy, and whether official explanations could still be trusted. Well, the psychological impact would be profound, of course. For thousands of years, humanity viewed itself as the dominant intelligent species on Earth and maybe within reachable space. Confirmation of advanced non-human intelligence would challenge deep assumptions about identity and superiority and destiny. But disclosure might also unite humanity in unexpected ways. National divisions would appear smaller than when viewed against a cosmic backdrop. Scientific cooperation might expand dramatically. New philosophical and spiritual movements would emerge almost immediately. The released files hinted at both options and also looked at optimism and fear within official discussions. Some analysts believe disclosure could inspire a new era of exploration and global cooperation. Others, of course, warned about societal fragmentation, cult movements, political extremism, and mass psychological instability. Both outcomes may be possible simultaneously. Economics would transform as well. Advanced technologies became associated with disclosure, particularly revolutionary energy or propulsion systems. The implications for global industry would be staggering. Entire economic sectors would collapse while new ones would emerge rapidly. Military implications would remain enormous. Governments would immediately seek to understand whether non-human intelligence represented observers, allies, indifferent explorers, or maybe potential threats. Well, defense priorities would shift overnight. At the same time, ordinary human life would continue. People would still work, raise families, argue about politics, and struggle with personal challenges. Humanity adapts remarkably well to revolutionary change. History's shown that repeatedly. Scientific revolutions, once considered civilization shattering, eventually became integrated into normal life, such as heliocentrism, evolution, nuclear physics, space travel, artificial intelligence, all transform human understanding profoundly. Maybe the disclosure would follow a similar pattern. The greatest long-term impact may not involve fear at all. It may involve perspective. Human civilization to begin viewing itself as part of a much larger cosmic reality rather than an isolated species alone in the universe. Philosophy, science, religion, and culture would evolve accordingly. Well, the release files offer no certainty regarding whether such a revelation is approaching, but they demonstrated one critical truth. Governments around the world consider the possibility serious enough to study its consequences extensively. And that alone represents a historic change. For generations, humanity asked whether it was alone in the universe. Now the question slowly shifting into focus may even be more profound. What happens if the answer is no? Well, as disclosure accelerated, the search for truth entered dangerous territory. For decades, researchers struggled primarily against secrecy. Now they faced a second enemy just as formidable: deception. The released files revealed growing concern of the intelligence agencies regarding misinformation surrounding unidentified aerial phenomena. Officials worried that hoaxes and manipulated evidence and psychological operations could contaminate legitimate investigations beyond recognition. And these fears are not unfounded, of course. The UFO field has always attracted fraud. From fake photographs and fabricated contact stories to forged government documents and then staged sightings, deception became intertwined with the phenomena almost from the beginning. Some of these hoaxes, of course, sought profit. Others pursued fame, ideological influence, or even just simple amusement. The modern digital era magnified the problem exponentially. Artificial intelligence can now generate convincing videos, audio recordings, documents, and imagery nearly indistinguishable from authentic material. Social media spreads false claims globally within minutes. The result, of course, is informational chaos. Researchers examine newly released files, finding themselves operating in an environment where separating reality from fabrication became increasingly difficult. This confusion may serve multiple interests simultaneously. Foreign intelligence agencies can exploit UFO narratives to generate distrust and destabilization. Domestic political actors can manipulate public fears for strategic purposes. Conspiracy entrepreneurs can monetize sensationalism endlessly and generate evidence, and genuine evidence exists disappearing beneath the noise. The release file suggests intelligence agencies recognize this danger clearly and early on. Internal discussions repeatedly reference narrative control, information contamination, public perception management, and psychological vulnerability. Well, some researchers went further. They argued portions of the disclosure movement itself may involve deliberate disinformation campaigns designed either to conceal sensitive technology or manipulate public belief. And the Cold War history, of course, supports these possibilities. Governments have repeatedly conducted psychological operations involving fabricated narratives, media influence, and control leaks. UFO mythology occasionally provided useful camouflage for classified aerospace projects. So could similar operations still be occurring? Almost certainly yes, to some degree. Of course, the question is how much? Well, this uncertainty created deep fractures within the disclosure community. One faction viewed nearly all official statements as deception. Another trusted government releases too readily. And a third struggled to navigate between paranoia and naivete. The release files offered little clarity. Instead, they revealed a landscape in which truth, secrecy, speculation, and manipulation overlap constantly. Maybe the most dangerous effect of this environment is psychological exhaustion. When every claim becomes questionable and every document potentially fabricated, people eventually stop believing anything at all. Cynicism replaces investigation, and that outcome benefits secrecy naturally. The age of deception may therefore represent one of the greatest obstacles to genuine understanding of the phenomena, not because truth is impossible to discover, but because reality itself becomes increasingly difficult to isolate from distortion. And somewhere within the storm of misinformation, genuine mysteries still remain unsolved. Well, whenever humanity confronts the unknown, belief systems emerge. UFO phenomena is no exception. Long before governments admitted unidentified aerial phenomena existed, individuals and groups were already constructing spiritual movements and apocalyptic predictions and quasi-religious ideologies around the mystery. Released files reveal that intelligence agencies monitored some of these groups carefully. Officials feared charismatic leaders could exploit disclosure fears to manipulate vulnerable populations. History provided ample reason for concern. Throughout the 20th century, UFO-related movements ranged from harmless curiosity groups to dangerous cult organizations convincing extraterrestrials would soon intervene in human affairs. Some believed aliens were benevolent guides. Others warned of cosmic invasion. Others claimed direct communication with advanced beings, offering spiritual enlightenment. That phenomena blurred lines between religion and psychology and mythology. One of the earliest major contactee movements emerged during the 1950s. Individuals such as George Adamski claimed peaceful extraterrestrials from Venus and other planets warned humanity against nuclear war. Scientists dismissed the stories immediately, but millions of people actually found those stories compelling. The Cold War created fertile emotional ground for cosmic salvation narratives. Fear of nuclear annihilation pushed some people toward the belief systems promising intervention by superior intelligence. And over time, the stories evolved. By the 1970s and 80s, darker themes emerged involving abductions, genetic experimentation, government conspiracies, and hidden alien agendas. The released files showed growing concern in psychological and intelligence circles regarding the social effects of these beliefs. Some analysts feared the mass movements built around disclosure expectations could become destabilizing. And their concerns, of course, were justified. The Heaven's Gate tragedy in 1997 demonstrated how UFO-based belief systems could become deadly. Members of that group committed mass suicide, believing a spacecraft hidden behind the Hale-Bopp comet would transform their consciousness to a higher existence. And that event shocked the world, of course. Critics pointed to Heaven's Gate as a proof UFO spirituality could become psychologically dangerous. Researchers worried that disclosure movement itself might attract increasing extremism as public interest expanded. But not all belief communities became destructive. Many individuals drawn toward UFO spirituality viewed the phenomenon as symbolic of human evolution, expanded consciousness, or cosmic interconnectedness rather than literal invasion scenarios. The release files hinted that government psychologists studied these reactions carefully. And why would they do that? Well, because the phenomenon appears to trigger profound existential responses in a lot of folks. Encounters, whether physical, psychological, or symbolic, often alter belief systems dramatically. Some witnesses became deeply spiritual afterwards. Others developed paranoia and distrust. Still others rejected conventional institutions entirely. UFO mystery became more than an aerospace issue. It evolved into a culture and spiritual phenomena influencing religion and politics, philosophy, and the identity of the human race itself. Modern disclosure accelerated these trends. Social media created massive online communities centered around UFO belief systems. Podcasts and documentaries transformed fringe ideas into mainstream conversation. Influencers, self-proclaimed insiders, and disclosure prophets gained enormous audiences. The result was both fascinating and dangerous. Some sought genuine understanding. Others exploited fear and hope and uncertainty for profit or influence. The release files offered a sobering reminder. Humanity's reaction to the unknown may ultimately prove as important as the phenomena itself. Because history demonstrates repeatedly that people don't merely observe mysteries, they build meaning around them, and that meaning can become extraordinarily powerful. Well, as the public pressure mounted, governments around the world released increasing numbers of UFO-related documents. But researchers quickly realized an uncomfortable truth. Most important files likely remain classified. The released material often resembled the fragments from its larger archive, and documents themselves referenced missing annexes, restricted appendices, classified technical analysis, and special access programs unavailable to ordinary investigators. Some files appeared heavily censored, others ended abruptly. Many referenced released materials withheld entirely. And of course, this pattern fueled growing suspicion. Researchers began to ask what remains hidden. And the released files reveal continuing government concern regarding advanced propulsion systems, multi-sensor military encounters, strategic vulnerabilities, and unexplained aerospace phenomena near sensitive installations. But officials consistently avoided definitive conclusions publicly. That silence became increasingly revealing. If the phenomena were entirely solved, why maintain such extensive secrecy? One possibility is straightforward: national security. Military systems, radar capabilities, sensor technologies, and classified aerospace research naturally require protection. Even ordinary UFO investigations can expose sensitive defense information unintentionally. But many researchers believe the secrecy extended far beyond conventional security concerns. The files hinted repeatedly at compartmentalized investigations involving extraordinarily restricted access structures. Some whistleblowers alleged even senior officials lack complete visibility into certain programs. Whether these claims are fully accurate or not remains uncertain. Still, the pattern of fragmentation appeared undeniable. The released documents occasionally contained subtle clues, references to non-conventional technology, unexplained material analysis, and discussions of objects displaying performance beyond known engineering. None openly confirmed extraterrestrial origins, but neither did they eliminate the possibility. Maybe the most significant revelation involved uncertainty itself. Internal discussions frequently showed analysts debating interpretations without consensus. Intelligence officials often appeared less confident privately than public statements suggested. And this possibility deeply unsettled researchers. What if governments are withholding information not because they possess complete answers, but because they don't? That idea challenged traditional conspiracy assumptions. Maybe secrecy persists partly because uncertainty remains politically dangerous. Admitting ignorance regarding unexplained objects operating near military assets could undermine confidence in defense institutions and government authority. Well, these files suggested officials struggled with this dilemma for decades. Reveal too little and the public distrust grows. Reveal too much and uncertainty spreads. The result became controlled disclosure. Carefully measured transparency balanced public pressure against institutional caution. But some files still remain locked away. Researchers believe classified archives likely contained additional radar data, satellite imagery, multi-sensory military encounters, retrieval investigations, technical analysis, and intelligence assessments never publicly released. And whether these records contain revolutionary revelations or merely unresolved confusion remains unknown. The existence of the hidden archive itself has become part of the mystery. The disclosure era has opened a lot of doors, but it didn't open all of them. And somewhere inside secure facilities, digital vaults, and compartmentalized intelligence systems, the final classified files still await. And on that note, we've come to the end of today's show. We'll be back tomorrow and talk more about UFO disclosure. What do we really know? Well, until then, this is Ken Hudnall for the Ken Hudnall Show saying have a truly great evening.